If you're wondering whether prompt engineer is still a real role in 2026, this video will give you the honest answer. Where that role actually sits today and how to position yourself if this is the kind of work that you really want to do. So here is the short answer upfront because I don't like dragging this out. Yes, prompt engineer still exists in many places. And no, it is no longer growing as a standalone product role the way that people expected a few years ago. So here is an important nuance that I want you to know. Prompt engineering did not disappear, it's just been expanded. It has moved beyond just writing prompts and becoming part of something much bigger, which a lot of teams now think of as context engineering. If you've been building prompt skills and you feel confused about where you fit in, I totally get it. The landscape has shifted fast. So in this video, I'll explain what actually has changed, where prompt engineering lives today, and how it overlaps with context engineering and how to think about your next move without chasing outdated titles. Hi, I'm Aishwarya Srinivasan. I've been working in the machine learning and AI space for over 10 years now. I did my master's in data science from Columbia University, and I've worked at companies like Microsoft, Google, IBM, and Fireworks AI. I spend a lot of times with teams building and evaluating real generative AI systems. So what I'm sharing here reflects what's actually happening in production, not just trends on LinkedIn or Twitter. Alright, let's break this down. To understand where prompt engineer sits in 2026, you have to look at where it originally started. In 2022 and 2023, prompt engineering was mostly about experimentation. Writing prompts in chat interfaces, tweaking wording, trying different instruction, and seeing what broke. There were very few evals, no real versioning, and almost no ownership of production behavior. It was very experimental, very explanatory, very manual work, and at that stage, it did make sense. Models were still new and brittle, so small wording changed the output behavior. Teams were still figuring out how these systems behaved. But by 2026, a few fundamental things have changed. Models have become much better at instruction following, structured output and tool calling have become a standard, and prompt moved out of the chat interfaces into code, configurations, and pipelines. And most importantly, companies stopped experimenting and started shipping GenAI systems to real users at scale. Now, once that happened, writing prompts by itself stopped being enough for most teams. Companies didn't just need somebody to find prompts that worked, they needed people who could control the behavior, test the reliability, and own the outcomes from these models. And that is the key shift. So prompt engineering did not die, it stopped being the whole job. So let's be precise about this. Where does prompt engineer title still exist today? You mostly see it in foundational model companies, in safety teams, and organizations working close to model behavior itself. In these environments, prompt engineers are not building product features. They are testing the models, they are doing things like adversarial prompting, probing instruction boundaries, stress testing these models under ambiguous or malicious inputs, and uncovering failure modes. Now, this work often lives inside red teams or model safety teams or evaluation and reliability groups. This is also where prompt engineering is rolling into QA and testing. Traditional QA tested deterministic software. Now, GenAI systems are probabilistic. So, prompt-based testing becomes one of the methods to use to validate their behavior. That is an important distinction. Prompt engineering here is not a standalone career ladder. It is a testing technique used within QA, red teaming, and evaluation roles. So yes, the role still exists, but it's a narrower, more specialized, and much more aligned with testing than product development. Another place where prompt engineering still is very important is on the user side. As a user of different products, you need to be really good at prompt engineering, but that alone is not going to be your role. If you are an app developer, you need to be really good at prompt engineering, the coding tools. If you're a product manager, you need to be really good at prompt engineering tools like ChatGPT or Gemini. So on the user side, yes, prompt engineering is still very, very relevant, but prompt engineer as a standalone role is not really integrated in those teams. Okay, so now this is where I want to introduce a concept that matters a lot in 2026, that is context engineering. While prompt engineering used to mean, what do I say to the model? Context engineering is about everything the model sees and uses to make a decision. So very quickly, let's go over what context engineering actually means. It obviously includes the prompt, but it also includes system instructions, developer messages, retrieve documents, tool outputs, memory, state or history, schemas, and even which model a request is routed to. In other words, prompt engineering is now just a slice of a much larger surface area. Let me make this very concrete with an example. A few years ago, prompt engineering might have looked something like this. You'll write something like, "You are a helpful AI assistant, answer the user's question clearly and concisely." And then you would keep tweaking the wording. You would add instructions about tone, you would add examples, you would add formatting rules, and for simple demos that did work and it still works. But now look at the same problem from a context engineering lens. The prompt is still there, but it is no longer doing all the work. The system instruction defines the roles, the boundaries, and the safety rules. The developer message defines how the task should be approached and how the output should be structured. The retrieved document brings in relevant knowledge at runtime instead of relying on what the model might remember. Then state and history tells the model where the user is in the workflow and what has already happened. And memory captures long-term preferences or past interactions that should influence the future responses from the model. Then tool outputs inject real data from APIs, databases, or other services. Then we have schemas which constrain the output so it can reliably plug into the rest of the system. And model routing decides which model should even see this request in the first place. All of this becomes context. This is especially true once you start building agentic AI systems. In agentic AI systems, prompts alone don't get you very far. Agents operate across multiple steps. They reason, they act, they observe results, and they reason again. Now that means context accumulates over time. You have to understand how context flows from one step to the next, how tool results are fed back into the model, how state is updated, how memory is scoped, and how you prevent context from growing uncontrollably or drifting away from the original goal. So when teams say in 2026 that they need somebody who is good at prompting, what they usually mean is something much bigger. They basically need somebody who's able to understand how to design, manage, and evolve context for LLM-driven systems. Now that is context engineering. And once you start thinking this way, you stop obsessing over the perfect prompt and you start designing systems that actually work in the real world. And this is exactly why prompt engineer as a standalone role might be fading away. The work did not disappear, it's just expanded upward into system thinking. In product-facing roles like AI engineer or applied AI engineer, prompting is embedded inside context engineering. You're deciding what information the model sees, when it sees it, and in what form. You're designing retrieval strategies. You're managing memory. You're defining schemas and tool contracts. You're controlling how context changes over multi-step workflows. Now, in testing and safety roles, context engineering shows up as stress testing the entire execution path. Not just single prompts, but how models behave when context is incomplete, misleading, overloaded, or adversarial. So here is the important takeaway for you. Prompt engineering in 2026 is not obsolete, but it is no longer sufficient by itself. The people who grow are the ones who understand prompting inside of this broader context lifecycle. So how do you position yourself based on this reality? If you're aiming for testing, QA, or red team roles, be explicit. Talk about prompt-based testing, adversarial evaluation, and failure mode analysis. Now, if you're aiming for product roles, market yourself as an AI engineer or an AI product manager. Somebody who understands context engineering, agentic workflows, evaluation, and reliability. And please do not anchor your identity to a title from 2023. Anchor it to the problems that you can actually solve. So bringing this all together, yes, prompt engineer might still exist in certain places in 2026, but it is no longer a broad standalone product role. It's increasingly a specialized function inside QA, testing, red teaming, and model safety. Prompt engineering did not die, it grew into context engineering. If you understand how prompts, tools, memory, retrieval, and agents work together as a system, you are in a very, very strong position. I'll add some reference links in the description below if you want to start learning more about context engineering, and I'll also put out a separate video going much deeper into this topic, especially how it applies to agentic AI systems. If this video helped, please do subscribe and turn on the bell icon. I regularly post about AI and ML career tips, free resources, educational explainers, and my journey building a career in AI as an immigrant in the US. So drop a comment and tell me where you are right now. Are you coming from a QA background, product, research, or just getting started? And what would you like me to go deeper on next? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.